And really importantly, what we know is that a child will do as well as the grown-ups around them. So that's people in their family, but also people they come into contact with, including at preschools and other daycare centres. So we know that it's really important for us to be trying to convey to children a positive message of that the world is okay and safe and that things will be all right again.
Early childhood education and care services are well positioned to support families after a natural disaster. One of the reasons for this is that we are a place of security and trust. So we often already have established relationships. Families often share with us information that they won't share in other contexts because they feel safe and secure. They trust us to look after their children. One of the challenging things at the beginning of this year is that relationship or connection hasn't been established yet. And it can be a real driver to form a partnership in order to support the family. So families can come into the Early Childhood Centre as a bit of a hub, a mixing place. It's a pivotal position to actually allow families to network within each other. All of the support doesn't have to come from the service supporting the family. We can actually connect families to each other to provide a long-term ongoing network.
I think business as usual is important because it provides families, and the preschoolers obviously, a really safe and secure environment to come back to. That stability, that familiarity, so that they can come here and take a breath, I guess, and be calm again.
And get away from the chaos. And I think on a practical level, there was a lot of families that had a lot to do after the fire had been past their place, and there's a lot of practical things they can't do with small children. So on a practical level, for them to know that their children are safe and happy and with people that really love them was really important for them too. I think it added to their well-being. But yeah, so it was important we got back. Yeah.
And I guess to try and shield the children from some of the more traumatic outcomes in terms of livestock euthanasia and things like that. I mean, it's devastating enough to have to do it, but if your children are around while you're trying to deal with that emotion, then impossible for families.
And we found that so many of the families had multiple things that they were dealing with at that time. Like there was loss of income for some families, loss of livestock, loss of fencing, lots of fencing. But also I think on a personal level there was a lot of empathy too. A lot of people very traumatised by the empathy of hearing people that had lost their homes and their livestock. Can you think of some others?
Also the predominantly men who volunteered, the bushfire fighters, and all the them trying to fit back in, and I know some of the men felt incredible guilt because they weren't able to do enough to help save their friends and houses or stock or wool sheds or whatever.
I think the way that we respond to children who are distressed or experiencing disengagement after something like a fire is just be really present. I think be really present and know that relationships come first. I think don't worry about what kind of craft they're taking home that day, but just sitting with the children, being very present for both the families and the children, so that they know that you can be have a really trusting relationship with you. I think that came first. If they do experience distress, be okay with that emotion, I guess. It's only something we've learnt since then. Yeah. I guess I can't say we do it perfectly every time, but I do know that responding to naming an emotion, sitting with them through the, I know there's a new term that we've just heard of recently, is holding space when a child's in distress has been really powerful in building relationships. They might fall apart and become overwhelmed, but when they come back and when they repair, we feel like our relationships just growing that much fatter. Yeah. It's really nice. And but not to be scared of those big emotions, because we know that we're trying to build their emotional intelligence, I guess. And if we can do that, then we're saying that emotions are okay too. I think that's how we see it.
I think so, yeah.
Well, what we've found here in the Coolah community, the effects of the bushfire have been long-lasting, because our bushfire fell into a really lovely long drought. And I know that we've had families that would say, oh, it just won't rain in the fire ground. We've found that, I think, one really important thing was not only is it long lasting for the children, because we're seeing hyperarousal when fire cues come up,
Yeah.
fire evacuation,
Yeah.
ambulances or fire trucks going past the preschool, or the smell of smoke. But also we find that the community is quite tense. There's a lot of stress within the community, and I guess we notice that parents, if you're having those small little discussions with them, can be more hyper alert in those situations, if that makes any sense, or have a negative bias. So when you go in to have a conversation, sometimes they can pick up all the negative things you're saying, not the positive things.
Yeah.
So we've had to be really aware of that,
Yeah.
and how we can communicate so they know we're on their team really clearly.
Yep.
Communicating with families can be pretty tricky at the best of times, but I think when people have been through a trauma, we were really conscious of adding any more stress to families' lives, particularly when it was significant, the information that we wanted to share. We're very mindful that some families didn't have a lot of space for anything other than trying to get through the day, and that continues to today. So when you're communicating with families, I think I made lots of missteps actually in going in too hard too fast, and them being quite offended, which was hard to take when you're trying to you're communicating with them to work as a team. So being a very active listener, just really judging where their mood and their arousal level is at any time, giving them a cup of tea and something to eat before we start a meeting has been essential, because we work lots better with something in our tummy.
Yeah. Trying to build some sort of friendship or relationship with them before we jump in head first.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, Jo's very good at it too, is really slowing and modulating your voice, taking your time. Low and slow, as a good OT said, to help co-regulate them in that situation has been important. And I think the other thing that we've found is having professionals also give us some information as well. So and communicating with families that we're on their team, we're working for the same purpose, and being very careful around the language we use in regards to their children and their development, and not try and make sure that we're not communicating in a way that they might perceive it as the blame game, or but a way of working together as a team to support them and their family, and being very okay, I think, Jo, being okay of knowing how much space they have in their life to maybe add speech pathology or an OT that has to be an hour and a half away. So very,
because some of that is hugely it's almost undoable for some of the families when we take into travel and cost and whatever else they're having in their life.
Brain space. And hearing that their child might need significant therapy might not be on their radar. So what can we do here? How can we make the best program for that child here?
Yeah.
We can still keep tinkering away and suggesting things and try and find the right fit for them at that point in time, but being conscious of that and not being too judgmental, and having empathy around what their life is like for them. We might not understand it, but we have to reflect that everyone's story is probably very different.
Yeah.